But just want to reflect a little bit on paternity leave because it was really impactful this second time around. I think when you're a dad that first time in paternity leave, we have a lot of friends who just had their first kid. You're not useless by any stretch of the imagination. You're very needed, you're very necessary, but you're not very necessary as a parent, right? You're really, really necessary as a spouse. The second time around, you're very necessary both as a parent and as a spouse, right? So I was making meals, cleaning up, doing a lot of the chores that I don't normally do because Emily takes care of them, or the cooking, which I don't normally do because Emily takes care of it, and that kind of thing. So I'm tending to her and then also basically becoming the primary caretaker of our toddler, of Jordan, for those few weeks. And so that was really special. It was actually really nice. I think as a man, you yearn to be needed. I think that's something that is really written on the heart of every man. I think it's a very fundamental need that men have, is to be needed. And you get to experience that in such a deeper and more powerful way that second time around on paternity leave. Because I think one of the things that made it so easy for Jordan to transition into being one of two and no longer being an only child was these 3 weeks for him of absolute bliss, of endless daddy time. Just me being around all day, every day. We had 21 straight Saturdays essentially in his mind. And it was amazing. He just loved it. I mean, we would do fun stuff. We'd go for walks together. We'd go play golf together at the golf course or at the park. We'd go play basketball and hockey in the basement in the middle of the day. We went to a museum, to a little farm to see animals, to the library together. We did all kinds of things, grocery store. And he's just like, I get to do all this stuff with my dad, which I don't normally do. And it was really cool because he's really getting into that phase of life where he wants to imitate his father. It has been really impactful on me to see how much he's doing that and how much he watches me. When I catch him kind of staring at me or watching me when I'm driving, right? If I get a little road rage or I'm just feeling stressed or whatever I might be doing in the rear view mirror, because he has this little mirror on the back of the seat. And so I get to see him there, or I see him just watching me as I'm doing stuff or cleaning the kitchen or interacting with Emily, and just really seeing like, wow, this accountability is next level, right? He doesn't know. One of the beautiful things and one of the most challenging things is he doesn't know right from wrong, really, right? He does have a conscience, obviously, and there's certain things that are written on his heart that he does know kind of right from wrong, but generally speaking, he's picking all of that up from me. And it's one of the most beautiful things, one of the most powerful things, one of the most challenging things of fatherhood is to recognize that this little human, especially the little boys, your little girl is going to see how a man should act, but the little boy is going to see how he should act. Both are extremely important, but he's literally going to model so much of his life after me. And I get to see that he's already doing it now. In just the way that he talks, the things that he does, the little like funny things that he'll mimic and do. And usually it's very cute, but sometimes it's very troubling because you get to see him or hear him do things that I'm like, oh, he got that from me and I shouldn't be saying that, or I shouldn't be doing that, right? And that's been really challenging, but I think it's one of the most beautiful things of parenthood. And I've always thrived in that situation. I always say that my spiritual life is so much better when I'm leading something, when I'm leading Bible study or a small group or podcasting even, or speaking. I really struggle when I'm doing things that I think kind of feel like they're just for me. But the more directly I can see the correlation between my actions, my behavior, my example, and how it impacts other people, the easier I find it to hold myself to a really high standard. And I fail at that all the time. I'm by no means perfect at it. I'm not even exceptional at it, I wouldn't say. But it is helpful to embrace that call to say, hey, you're the standard to this kid. This person who you love as much as anybody in the world, if not as much, I would say as much as, because just your wife that is comparable, even in the same stratosphere, he is going to model goodness, fatherhood, masculinity after the way you behave, the way you talk to yourself, the way you talk to other people, the way you talk to your wife, the way you talk to God. I mean, it's incredible, really, but it's a lot. It's a heavy burden. And the thing that's beautiful about masculinity is we're made for burden. We're made to embrace that. We're made to embrace that challenge. And that's really my approach to all of paternity leave. was I literally I wanted to share with you guys that, like, my goal for paternity leave was to lose my patience as few times as possible. And so I knew that going into it, he was going to have some temper tantrums. I knew there was going to be time where I wanted him to do things that he wasn't going to do them. He's 2 years old, right? So he's not. He's actually very agreeable and he's very obedient for being a 2-year-old, I think. But there's going to be times, right, where he's frustrating me, or maybe my wife is frustrating me, the baby is frustrating me, because I mean, newborns are extremely frustrating, right? Especially as the man, because you can't do anything to if you're totally breastfeeding, the man can do nothing to really console the baby at a certain point. You can do certain things, right? Sometimes bouncing helps, distracting, showing different things, talking to them, but at a certain point, there's nothing you as a man can do. The baby's hungry and wants to eat and is upset about it. There's nothing you can do, right? You're just gonna hold an upset baby for a while if your wife is occupied with something else. And so my goal truly was to just focus on patience. I said, I want to stay calm. I want to be in control of my anger, my emotions. And I really wanted to go into paternity leave this time, kind of viewing it as like a second ranger school. Because when I was in ranger school, you go into this knowing that this is going to be extremely difficult. And the anticipation sometimes makes it worse, but it also can make it a little bit more tolerable in a certain sense. And so I think in the anticipation of the suffering, of the difficulty, can actually in some ways make it a little bit easier. It can make it a little bit more bearable to know that, yes, I am going into this extremely challenging time and I need to prepare myself for that. I need to game plan, how am I going to feel? How am I going to react when I find myself at the end of the rope, when I find myself at the end of myself, when I find myself just drained and depleted and anticipating, okay, how's it going to feel when I'm gassed, right? Just absolutely tired, hungry, maybe. The baby's crying and Jordan's just like losing his mind, or he's not doing the things that I need him to do, or he's acting very difficult and I want to rest, but I can't, or I just get him down, right? And my wife asked me to hold the baby or asked me to do something as soon as I sit down. Like, how am I going to respond? These little moments, game planning this, I think is extremely helpful in navigating the challenges of everyday life with virtue, with holiness, and maintaining yourself and staying on that path that God has set you on, which you're going to deviate from. You're not going to be perfect with this, but it at least gives you some options for victory, right? A pathway to victory, a pathway to not losing your temper, to not being completely angry or completely thrown off by a toddler, by the way a 2-year-old is behaving, helping yourself to remember he is also just a child, like barely out of being a baby. He's still in diapers. He still speaks gibberish English, and he's got his own agenda. He's trying to figure out his own world, and this was a huge change for him, and this is a difficult time for him as well. So taking time to remember those things and to keep that in the forefront of your mind, to say this is also hard for him, and I'm the adult here. He's relying on me to, again, see how should I handle this difficult time in my life, this difficult moment, this time of transition and change and chaos. How should I navigate this? How does a man navigate this thing? And so you get to be that example to him. And so that was really my goal. And I think I did generally a good job of it. And these were the things that really helped me, was anticipating this, recognizing that it was a goal of mine. I wasn't just kind of coasting through life, but I woke up every day saying, okay, I need to embrace challenge and hardship. If I am suffering, I know that turning my attention to the suffering of others and focusing on how I can alleviate that is going to fill me with a lot more joy than me just staying angry within myself. And so how can I focus more on what others are going through, more on trying to make Emily's life easier, more on trying to make Jordan's life easier, more on trying to be there for Rosalia in the best way that I can and bonding with her, and not focus so much on myself. That is going to make my suffering actually a lot easier to deal with. And so that was also a major focus of mine. And then the third thing I would say is remembering that it's not forever. No suffering ever lasts forever, but when you're in the newborn phase, I remember this is something Emily says all the time. She recalls thinking when we had our first, that like when you're 2 weeks in, you really wonder, you start to question when you're hallucinating in the middle of the night. You're like, am I ever going to sleep through the night again? Am I ever going to get to this place again where I can actually just have a full night's rest? Am I ever going to really feel like myself again? And the answer is yes, but it takes time. And you're going to go through the valleys, you're going to go through the desert in order to get there. And so I think that that's a really important thing. And what I learned as I embrace all this, I embrace the suffering of this, and I let it be a time of formation and growth and love for me, was that it actually really helped me to develop in some serious ways, not just in my patience, but in many feminine virtues as well. As I transitioned to this role as basically a stay-at-home dad for 3 weeks, one, I confirmed that I never want to be a stay-at-home dad, and that I don't know how many men do it who do it. I can see why it leads to a lot of problems in most cases, but some are able to do it and they're happy with it and it works for their family, and that's for them. I know that I could do it if I had to, if it was like something serious happened to my family and I had to do it. But it is certainly not where I feel fulfilled. That is for certain. Although it was very beautiful and it was a lot of fun. But it was such a great training ground for feminine virtues because I was the primary caretaker for a small human being for this period of time, right? And so because I was Jordan's primary caretaker, I'm sitting here with him all the time, and I had to be there when he fell or got hurt. He actually came to me instead of going to Emily like he normally does. When he needed reprimanded or needed some patience and things like that, I got to focus on how to be more gentle, how to be more sensitive, not just in the sensitive. We think of sensitive all the time as being on the verge of tears or like really easily wounded or hurt by things other people say or do to us. But not just that, but sensitive as far as intuition goes, as far as actually sensing and feeling situations, right? Women have great intuition. They get great feelings for situations, for places, for opportunities, right? Dave Ramsey has this great quote where he says that, where he's like, if my wife doesn't feel good about something, if she says she's got a feeling about something, he's like, I always listen to that feeling, and it saved me a lot of money over the decades. And I feel the same way with Emily. Like, we made a really big investment last year into a startup, and it was about feeling. We had multiple opportunities come to us, and she was like, this one I feel really good about, this one I feel really bad about. And I'm, of course, also doing the logic side, right? And evaluating these things, joining meetings, joining calls, learning about the opportunities. But we work as a team in that way. And it doesn't mean that Emily's not logical too, but we have different strengths in that. And I think that we are naturally gifted those things. But both of us can always grow and improve in those areas. And so just to give an example of this, one of the things I started to realize as I was going through was at the beginning of paternity leave, I really tried to tire Jordan out at all costs. Like, my goal was, I'm going to get him to take the best naps. I'm going to get his nap time earlier in the day, and I'm going to help him take the best naps he's taken in the last 6 months. And my primary strategy for that was really, I'm just going to tire him out as much as I can. And so this is what I'm talking about with going to the park, taking him on walks, taking him to the basement and roughhousing and doing all these things. I'm like, I'm going to gas this kid out every day. And I started to realize over time, I was like, I'm actually tiring him out too much. He actually doesn't need to be running and active and doing things all morning long, right? He's down to one nap a day, usually around 1 or 2 in the afternoon to like 4 or 5. And I'm like, if he is overly tired and he's not sleeping well at night because he's hearing her cry and she's waking him up and different things like that, I started to realize, I started to sense like I'm over tiring this kid, because I could just see it in his eyes. I could see he was tired. I was seeing he was being a little bit more fussy or irritable. And I was like, maybe he doesn't need this. And so I started to change my behavior, started to change my approach to how I was leading him, how I was structuring his life, structuring his day so that he could thrive. And so it was me sensing that, not just being in my own agenda, sticking to my own plan. I know what's best, but actually having this sense to say, okay, I'm actually getting the feel from him that he's overtired and he's not sleeping well at night. So let's sit down for a little bit. Let's color. Let's try to mix in some books, some reading time for 20 or 30 minutes in the middle of the morning, just to sit down and have a little break. So all those things were really good. And the other is just kind of receptivity. And I think that kind of goes along with what I just said with sensitivity, or just that example that I gave, that it wasn't my agenda, right? When you're a stay-at-home mother or stay-at-home father, but with stay-at-home moms, yeah, you create the agenda, you might create the plan for the day, but there's going to be deviations. There's going to be time where you have a blowout and you have to get back in the car and go back home, or different things are going to happen. You have to have this openness, this receptivity to God's will and to God's plan. And that's really difficult. It's hard to do, right? It's not fun to have a plan, to have a whole day thing planned out or things you're excited about, and then it gets totally rocked or totally tossed off, or just being receptive at times to let Jordan lead sometimes. I don't have to tell him every single moment what he's going to be doing. But if we're in the basement and he wants to play hockey, then he wants to play basketball, then he wants to play soccer, just kind of being open and going with the flow, right? As somebody who comes from a place where I work in sales and have sales calls and internal meetings and structure and schedule time for podcasting and try to keep my calendar. I'm looking at my calendar 50 times a day, the night before, the morning of, looking at the end of the day, seeing like, did I get everything done? To-do list, categorize into different things. It's incredible to just have a day where it's like we have nothing to do but exist and keep these little baby humans alive and love each other and serve each other and just kind of go with the flow and just go with it and say, Jordan, what do you want to do today? What do you want to have for breakfast? And yeah, he has to operate within limitations and reason. I'm not going to go out and if he says he wants crepe, I'm not running to the store to get him a crepe, but just giving him some time to say like, hey, what would you like to do today, buddy? Great. Let's do that. Let's go to the park. If it's nice outside. You're right. That would be fun. And just giving him some autonomy to say, yeah, you can pick what we're going to do today. And just being receptive to that and just being open and kind of going with the flow. And so that was really cool. Second to last thing is getting back to work. And so after those 3 weeks, which were really beautiful and awesome and fulfilling, I was ready to get back to work for sure. Again, it was beautiful. I love my family as much as the next guy, more than the next guy, I would say, because I think that the average man doesn't actually love his family that much by and large in America today, unfortunately. And that's the average, I'm saying. That includes deadbeat dads in the average and absent fathers and things like that. But I love my family a lot. All that to say, there's a long-winded way of saying I love my family a lot. Top 10 percentile, top 5 percentile, I would say. And I was ready to get back to work. And the thing for me was, and this is the thing I think is so challenging, I would imagine if I was a stay-at-home dad, is just this yearn to like build and do things and go out and kind of like hunt and kill for the family, right? To like provide for the family. I have this dream of creating this life for my family and getting to pursue that every day actively and build that and build momentum towards that and solve problems and add value and fix things. And I'm not fixing things like I'm not a car mechanic, but fixing problems that my team has or that we see in our sales pipeline or overcoming objections and training people and in my coaching program, right? Helping people and getting to hear their problems and hearing them out and helping them to navigate this and pursue excellence to fulfill their potential in their lives. I just couldn't wait to get back to that. Sharing things with you, my podcast listeners, and on social media and all this kind of stuff. I was really excited to get back to adding value. And I love you. The most value that I add is at home. Gave hopefully a great reflection earlier on how important I am in the life of my son and the life of my daughter and to my wife, and embracing that importance, embracing the value that I add here is the most important thing. But it's different still than the value that I add out in the world. And you have this yearn for both of those things. I think that some men don't have the yearn to go out there and also gain the respect of the world through providing and succeeding in life. I think some men don't have the desire to earn the respect in their home, right? And so they put everything into earning the respect and approval of the world, earning success, achieving great things, but they don't care what their family thinks about them. They don't care what their wife thinks, their kids are absent in a lot of ways. That's not the solution that I'm promoting. I think that the Catholic method should be you err, right? You have more preference and devotion to earning the respect of your wife and children, but you also recognize that is in many ways tied up in how successful and the life you're able to provide for them by going out there in the world and being successful there too. And you have just, I think, an innate desire to continue to want to achieve and be great and contribute to the world and to society, right? I think that's an important thing for men to have. And I think that men throughout generations had